In today's video, we're going to be diving into the upcoming pattern, taking a look at the very extreme cold air on the way for basically tomorrow and through late next week. So we are going to be seeing an extended period of very, very frigid air, even some very rare snowfall for deep south locations like Texas, Louisiana, perhaps Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, Georgia. A little bit up in the air now, but South Carolina, North Carolina, portions of Virginia might see some snowfall as well. We have seen a southern trend with this storm that we need to discuss today over the past, I would say, 24 hours. There is still time for this to trend either northward or further southward or basically in any direction, but that clock is ticking and we are getting very, very close to this one starting up. So let's dive into it. First off, looking at the 6 to 10 day outlook, this is going to be for January 25th through 29th, and this is for the first time in probably a month, the first 6 to 10 day outlook that we've seen that looks perhaps not below normal in the east. It's near normal for basically most of the eastern states, but it's still not in the blue. And matter of fact, the west is in the blue, which likely would encourage more warmth than anything in the east, so I would lean that way. For the 25th through 29th time frame. Still, January will go down almost entirely guaranteed for 90% of areas here in the east. Will go down as a below normal temperature month because we're so far below normal already, and we do expect more of it here between now and the 25th. But we might finish the last like 5-6 days off on a warmer note. I think there still will be cold around from time to time. We talked about it yesterday, but revolving doors, how to look at it. It's going to be warm up, cool down, warm up, cool down. Let's take a look at the precipitation, and we will ironically see a upswing in the precipitation in the areas that have struggled to get much of anything going when it's cold. I feel your frustration. Trust me, I feel like, honestly, I've missed out on the snow more than anybody, but I know that's not true. It can't be true factually, but probably everybody feels that way right now that was hoping for some snow. I missed 2 or 3 snow events just to my north, and now very likely I'm going to miss one to my south as well. So it's just a big slap in the face. So trust me, I'm in the same boat as all of you. It's very, very frustrating stuff, especially after we've had winters that are too warm. It's like, okay, it didn't snow, it was too warm. What's the excuse this time? You know, like, why didn't it snow? And there's no real answer outside of just luck and just coincidence. I mean, it makes no sense, but that's weather for you, and that's why we love it so much. But above normal in the east, and not only that, the Four Corner states, up through a lot of the plains and Rockies as well. Below normal for the northwest, as well as some of the kind of like Midwest, Northern Plains area as well. Let's take a look at the 8 to 14 day outlooks, and we see this is for the 27th through the 2nd of February. And cooler in the west, but also this kind of northeast corridor is a little cooler as well, with warmth in between, as well as for the southeast. When we look at the precipitation during this time period, lo and behold, above normal in the east during this time period as well. This would have been really convenient to have the last 2 weeks, but we didn't. We did not. Although there is snow falling right now for Pennsylvania, New Jersey, parts of Maryland, Delaware, New York, southern New England. I caught the tail end of the Philadelphia playoff game where they narrowly escaped getting beat by the Rams, and that game was a total snow game. So I'm happy for those of you in Philadelphia. I feel for you guys, and I'm happy that you guys got your snow. I know one of the areas I get the comments from the most has to be the Philadelphia area as far as like the lack of snow. Also like New Jersey, I get a lot from there, New York City, areas that have really, really been in a dry slot the last couple of weeks with the storms. I've gotten the most comments from, so I'm very, very happy for you guys that you guys did end up getting that. When we look at the past 15 days overall, this is going to be about the 4th through the 19th. We do see below normal temperatures really, really prevailing here throughout the central and eastern states. Tomorrow we're going to upgrade to the 20-day period, so we'll look at the 1st through the 20th as a whole. It's going to look quite similar. But yeah, very, very cold month we've had. As we look at the European model, I would say this is the model that's the most on board for those of you in, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, perhaps eastern or southeastern Virginia. This model is going to give you your best shot as of now at seeing that snowfall, but it still is a really a very different look from what we even just saw yesterday. So we are seeing aggressive changes, and sometimes it's like this windshield wiper effect where we're kind of just going back and forth, but it really feels like we've taken like 5 steps in a row with the southward trend. So it's going to need some serious trend in the opposite direction. So it has to completely turn around that momentum of the south trend, and then it has to bring it a lot further north for us to be back on board for a plowable snowfall event in these areas. But flakes will be flying for a lot of folks. It does appear still, just not the event that we originally thought this would be based on model guidance. So let's take a look. I mean, obviously, I'm going to take us towards 7 p.m. That's kind of around when I'm recording, and we do see this heavy snowfall again in a corridor where we have been really needing some. So happy for you guys. This low, perfect placement. The cold air, perfect. This was a really, really good setup for you guys to see this snowfall. We do see that that is going to move up primarily into New England as we move overnight before completely moving out. What we will be left with is extremely cold temperatures for Monday into Tuesday, especially like Tuesday, Wednesday. We see our low forming over the Western Gulf. Still snowfall expected for Texas, Louisiana here. So the western end has been much less affected than the eastern end. We see Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida Panhandle, up into Georgia, South Carolina, especially coastal, and then North Carolina, especially coastal. But this is a quick mover by this point, and it is not as heavy as it was originally forecasted to be. We do see it just kind of move out pretty innocently there on the eastern end. We will go over the snowfall totals in a moment, but by Wednesday, we still have the very cold temperatures. Even into Thursday, those are still around. This is when things get interesting. We've talked about this over the last couple of days. We do have the potential for another low to start forming off the southeast, and unlike the one that is within like 72-ish, maybe like, 80, 90 hours away from basically finishing, so that would be the end of it. We're probably within 48 hours here of that one initializing, obviously, on the western end. But this one, we are a good 100 hours, between 4 and 5 days away from formation, so there is time for this one to look better, also look worse, but let's see what happens with it. It has started to look a little bit juicier on some model guidance. This is not the one, though. We see some mixed precipitation there for Eastern Carolina, perhaps Southeastern Virginia before that one moves out. We get this quick little warm push with that coastal system. Typically, there is what we call a warm nose in these coastal storms, and it pushes up the warm air with it, especially in these more coastal locations, and it just is not a good look on this model run. We will see some model guidance a little bit later on that's a little bit more optimistic. We see that there is a little bit of a quiet period. It's overall colder for the 26th, 27th. I would say there's a little bit of potential here around Monday the 27th for something to try to come together if we have this energy through the southeast, especially we have cold air pushing in. This would, if we saw a colder look, maybe be a southern slider potential, but we are kind of grasping at straws here. By the way, I just want to point that out, that I'm trying to point out possibilities that aren't very high probabilities right now, kind of just showing you what could change. And we've hit on a few of these where we've kind of shown you puzzle pieces that are apart right now that can be put together over time. I would consider this to be that. And we get a really strong low over the Great Lakes at the same exact time, bringing some snowfall to these Midwest and Great Lakes locations. This also brings in a pretty decent cold blast into the Northeast. Also another round of lake effect snowfall there. Like they need more of that up there. We do see the cold kind of continue here on the European model with warmth in the west. It's not going to be that simple when we look at the actual temperature anomalies. But this obviously looks a little cooler in the east than what the National Weather Service is suggesting, and a little warmer in the west. By the time we reach the 31st, we do see some sort of low pressure forming here. I don't know why that just got so small. It does that all the time. Here we go. So we see this low forming here over Texas, Oklahoma. Some snowfall if you're on the northern extent like Colorado, Kansas, Missouri. This is far out, so take it with a grain of salt. But severe weather potential on the underneath. If we do end up with these kind of central United States lows that rise up through the plains, we would be on high alert for severe weather in this underneath quadrant. So that's kind of why I'm pointing this out. Snowfall would be a really high probability also for the Southern Rockies into areas of the plains. So this type of storm, if the models keep suggesting this, would bring those types of impacts. We do see it move eastward, but it's more of like a snow to mix to rain type event. As you can see, the severe weather tracks across the Gulf in the southeast there. And then we end up the model run like this. And it's not the worst look in the world. If we would have seen this kind of a model run, let's call it last winter, I would be ecstatic because this is some of the best that we would have seen that winter. But for this winter, this is maybe one of the worst model runs as far as cold is concerned in the east, and it still looks relatively cold. It's very opportunistic, is what I would call it. So just to put things in perspective, we're a little spoiled at this point in this winter, one of the colder winters in memory, really, just as far as how consistent it's been. The only ones that come to mind are going to be like the 2013 2014 winters, and then you have to go back kind of into the 90s, 80s, 70s, especially 70s to find some that were like this. So definitely one for the 2020s record book, if you will. Let's take a look here at the GFS. I mean, obviously we have this ongoing system. We move on to our Gulf system, which looks very similar to the European model until we get to this point where the snow is a lot lighter, a lot briefer, and a lot further south on the eastern end of things than your European model. Really what we're seeing is this high pressure. Look at that over West Virginia, Virginia, Arkansas. We know that low pressure is very much repelled by high pressure. It's like oil and water. So when this is pushing in just like this and intensifying, it's really forcing the low pressure to stay far, far away. If we see these high pressure systems show up a little weaker, like let's say this one's like 1,028 and this one's like 1,030, we could see it creep northward a little bit, northwestward. Or let's say, they're centered right here. What if these, formed 50, 100 miles further towards the northwest? Well, what's going to happen is the low pressure, which is hanging around these areas, would also subsequently push 50 to 100 miles further inland, closer to the high pressure system. So you can see how everything kind of has the potential to shift around. And it's not as simple as there's a storm moving through and it's, the thumbnail might make it look simpler with just the arrow moving through. Like it's not just a storm like a hurricane just going wherever it wants to here. There is so many moving pieces and changes in any of these details. I mean, even the aggressiveness of the cold as a whole could change the trajectory. Equally so, if these high pressure systems are stronger or further towards the southeast, this snow is getting pushed out. We can't handle many more nudges to the southeast with this system before it's just completely gone. So kind of anything's on the table still, and I know you guys hate to hear that, but I hope you understand kind of based on that all that explanation just how these moving pieces can really, really impact things. We see that one move out, obviously. But again, we get this southeast system rolling in and a little bit of a better look here on the GFS. It's very close. We see North Carolina getting some wintry precipitation, Virginia as well, and even into the Delmarva and perhaps very far southern Jersey. And it comes awfully close to southern New England as well, the low pressure systems right here. And if we get any sort of western trend with this, we'll be watching closely for the East Coast for another winter storm. Very, very close to that first one. I mean, we're talking 24, 36, 48 hours later. So kind of back-to-back potential snowfall events. But again, not the greatest potential we've ever seen. What I would like to see this model showing is that kind of potential solution that we're talking about. That would be the highest probability of it happening, obviously. But at this point, a chance is going to move around. As we've seen, they can move in better directions for snow or worse directions for snow, and any sort of better improvements on this one or the one before it would make pretty drastic changes here to the next few days, next 5 days, 7 days. As we keep going, we see the GFS is a little less optimistic about the cold, especially between the 27th, 28th, 29th. We do get a little bit of a mid-Atlantic, kind of Ohio Valley, mid-Atlantic snow system there. Kind of reminds me of the storm tracks that we had a lot of in 2009 to 2010 winter. Of course, not that intense what we're looking at here, but a very similar storm path through the Ohio Valley into that kind of mid-Atlantic corridor. And we don't get the cold really returning in a big way until we reach kind of the 30th, 31st, 1st of February timeframe, where we get another mid-Atlantic up in a New England snow system, and then perhaps another one trying to set up right here around the 3rd, 4th, 5th of February. So again, it doesn't have that extreme cold that we're having, this upcoming few days in the long range. But you don't need that. We are seeing an overbearing amount of cold. If anything, the cold is working against us for snowfall right now. And there's nothing like that from what I'm seeing for late January into early February. But there is enough cold, and especially it's kind of off and on. It's pretty extreme at some points. Enough so to where snow will become available to areas in the southern mid-Atlantic, the Ohio Valley, just not the deep south, the very deep southeast, nothing like that. But southern mid-Atlantic, southern Ohio Valley, definitely possibilities still remain throughout the end of January and into early February, as we've seen modeled here. So perhaps still going to be quite wintry moving forward. When we look at the total precipitation, obviously as this storm has trended offshore, so has the precipitation. So we're not seeing quite as much for the east, but still these Gulf states looking quite nicely where the precipitation actually is going to be onshore, and also the Northwest not looking too shabby either. So when we look at the anomalies, although most of it's below normal in the Northwest, they are seeing quite a considerable amount. They just average such a high amount is the problem. Above average here across this kind of deep south area. Let's take a look here at the total snowfall on the European model, and we get a lot for the Rockies here. I wouldn't say a lot, probably an average to slightly below average amount, if anything, actually. The lakes are just on fire, and we get plenty of snowfall with this ongoing system, which has been quite heavy in a lot of these areas, 1 to 2 inches per hour in some spots. So a pretty hefty, quick snow system. But the greatest potential for snowfall with this upcoming system lies kind of between the Houston area and then the south central Louisiana area, which I don't know. That might be a record. I mean, you guys can go look back at all, like, whatever, 2,000 of my videos that I've uploaded before, but I don't think I've ever said that about a snow system. So this is a unique moment in the channel's history. The second greatest area would be not the Carolinas anymore, but the areas just to the east of here, where we kind of have still a remaining heavier pocket where we could get a couple inches for sure. And then South Carolina to North Carolina would be your third kind of quadrant where we have kind of a bullseye there, especially if we see any northwest trends. But be mindful that if we see any more southern trends, we might end up with nothing even in these spots. So keep that in mind. I want that on the record because I don't want to hear North Carolina and South Carolina people commenting on my videos in a couple days. You said there's going to be snowfall. No, this is entirely possible with what we've seen over the past 24 hours. Could completely go away with the remaining, 36 hours we have, or 48 hours. So just be mindful that this is going to be a nail biter. I hate those situations, but that is what it is. I'm further outside of it, so mine is more like I'm not expecting snowfall, but there's still this like little glimmer of hope. And yeah, I'm expecting to get disappointed for sure in my neck of the woods. As we take a look at the zoomed in look, I guess I should have just done this earlier, but I mean, a couple of inches still showing up here for South Carolina and North Carolina. Once was 6 to 10, now we're down to like 2-3 inches perhaps. Could dwindle away even further, like I mentioned, but perhaps 6 to 10. Texas, southeastern Texas, really into central Louisiana and south central Louisiana. So big time bullseye for them in the deep south. Total snowfall in the GFS model, a little less optimistic, as we mentioned, with this Carolina area. Same story for Texas, Louisiana. It has the same idea for a bullseye. And that's pretty much the only differences here. I mean, yeah, we're talking about like a dusting to maybe an inch or two in the Carolinas. So this could very easily be the solution that ends up happening. I have looked at some more recent kind of higher resolution models, which it's good to look at as we get a lot closer. And even those are starting to trend in this direction. Yesterday, we saw the GFS and the Europeans start to go away with it like they have. But still, we had like the NAM model showing a more northern track, and that was a good glimmer of hope. But that has even basically dwindled away. I should mention, I know I'm kind of dragging this on. It's a little bit more relevant to my neck of the woods, so I guess I get a little overly excited with this stuff. But I should mention that with the 18Z GFS that just came out and the 18Z European model run, we didn't look at that because the 18Z European model runs only go like 120 hours. We look at the full runs on the 12Z and 0Z, but the 18Z run did tick a little bit north on some of those models, which is the first time that's happened in like 4 runs. So could that be the beginning of a northern trend? That is how it happens sometimes, and we're not going to know really until we see the overnight runs and the 12Z tomorrow, but we could be seeing another kind of quick northerly movement. I guess it's gone away in 24 hours. We still have more than 24 hours to go, so there is time technically, but the closer and closer we get, the less these models want to jump around typically. So it is really going to be a nail biter here. As we take a look at the temperature pattern, according to the European model, we do see this cold air blasting in again, just as intense as we've always kind of thought it would be, sticking around through late week, like Thursday, Friday, especially if you're along the East Coast. And then we start to get the more like neutral temperatures. There's like some yellows on certain days, some blues. Again, revolving door. It's kind of popping over and over and over again, back and forth. We do see a more substantial cooldown here by the time we reach the 28th, 29th, 30th, 31st. Especially in the Northeast, very much so along the lines of what we saw on the 8 to 14 day outlook from the Climate Prediction Center. So this is probably what they're seeing. And then we get a more substantial warm up as we move into early February on the European model. For the GFS model, we get the cooldown, again, lasting through late week, revolving door kind of back and forth. And then you guessed it, 29th, 30th, 31st. More substantial cooldown, even lasting into the 1st, 2nd, perhaps. Here we are at the 3rd, and then we're seeing some warmer temperatures move in. But really on the GFS, even by the 4th of February, we still have a pretty solid, what we call positive PNA, and this really just forces the cold air around, and we can kind of see that motion happening. There's some warmer air ahead of this, which is very typical, but this could all get pushed out. Again, specifics aren't too important when we're looking at 384 hours out, but to see a model showing these cooldowns continuing to happen, that gives us an idea that that may still be happening by late January, early February. Not specifically Tuesday afternoon, February 4th, but just overall around that time frame is a better way to look at it. With all that being said, I hope that you guys got a kind of clearer image of the upcoming pattern. I feel like if anything, we're kind of moving into more like confusing territory. Even, for me, it's like, again, big nail biters, really no conclusive information from the models. We see a lot of movement, so it's tough, but we look at it and we discuss it every single day. So be sure to subscribe. You can even hit the bell icon for daily notifications when we upload so you never miss one. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy it. Leave a comment down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.